this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to do the double knitted button band in the Cassie cardigan pattern. I've knitted up a little swatch using a single ply yarn just to make it a little bit easier to see what I'm doing, but the pattern does call for a fluffy or mohair yarn, but just for the purpose of making it super clear what I'm doing, I've chosen to use the single ply yarn for this video. And I've also used a contrast color for the button band just to make it easier to see, but in the actual pattern, you'll just use the same color throughout. If you haven't already watched my video on the Italian cast on, make sure to give that a watch before this video. It just shows exactly how it's done specifically in this pattern. So even if you think you know how to do the Italian cast on, it will be worth a watch just to make sure that you've done it correctly for this pattern. So I have my 7 stitches cast on, and at the end of that video, I made a note that the tail that is at the back of your work, just bring that in front so that you have basically locked in your working yarn and so that it doesn't fall off because the stitch isn't really kind of locked in yet, if that makes sense. So to begin our double knitting, it's very, very easy and it's very repetitive. So I'm going to be knitting continental style, so I hold the yarn in my left hand, but if you knit in English style, which means you hold the yarn in your right hand, you can definitely still do that. It doesn't change anything about this technique, but just so that you're not confused about why I'm knitting with the yarn in my left hand, that's my preferred way of knitting. So we're going to start with a regular knit stitch. And then what we're going to do is bring the yarn forward. And we're going to slip 1 stitch purlwise with the yarn still in front. And then we're going to bring the yarn to the back. We're going to just keep doing that. So knit 1, bring the yarn forward, slip 1 with the yarn in front, bring the yarn to the back, knit 1, bring the yarn forward, slip 1 with the yarn in front, bring the yarn to the back. And when we get to our last stitch here, as you can see, I'm not going to just knit this stitch normally because we're trying to connect these stitches here to the stitches that we'd already picked up along the edge of the button band. So to connect these 2 stitches, I'm going to knit them together, but through the back loop. So I take my right needle, insert it into the back loop, and then into the back loop of this first stitch here, and I'm going to knit them together. And that's the first row complete. So I'm going to turn my work now. So now on the next row, I'm going to start with a slip 1 with the yarn in front. So I'm going to slip that stitch across, bring the yarn to the back, and I'm going to knit 1, and then repeat, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, and then slip 1. Now I'm going to turn my work. And you can see how there's like a really nice clean edge from the Italian cast on. And we're going to just keep going the same way we have, but I'm just going to do a couple of rows on camera so you can see. So we start with a knit 1, bring the yarn in front, slip 1, and then knit 1, bring the yarn in front, slip 1, knit 1, bring the yarn in front, slip 1. And now we're going to connect these stitches. So knit 2 together through the back loop and turn our work. Now we're going to slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. Just going to keep repeating this. I'll do one more on camera so you can kind of see how it comes together. So I'm going to come back when I have done a couple more rows so you can see what it looks like. So I have only got 1 stitch left on the of the stitches I picked up. So I'm going to just do these last 2 rows. So I'm going to knit 2 together, pull this tightly, and turn my work and just work my last row. Okay. So you can see how nice and clean it looks on both sides. I love double knitted butter bands. They just give this extra thick and super neat finish. Now we're at the point where I need to bind off, and you'll see in the pattern it says to use the grafting method to bind off. Before we can do the grafting method, we do need to get these stitches onto 2 different needles. And the way I'm going to do it, it might be a bit risky, so you can also get another pair of needles and transfer them separately. However, I'm just going to take the risk because I don't think shouldn't be too hard. There's not that many stitches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip these off the needle, and you can see how they kind of go into 2 different rows. We've got 4 stitches and 3 stitches. So I'm basically just going to take this needle and place these 3 stitches onto one of the needles. And I'm going to take the other needle. I'm going to hold this here. And I'm just going to, without dropping them, place the stitches at the front onto this front needle. And you can see we now have the 2 sets of stitches. To bind off the stitches, as I said, we're going to use the grafting method. There is a tutorial for the grafting method in the technique section of the book. However, you'll notice that there is, as I said before, an odd number of stitches, so 4 on the front, 3 on the back. Don't worry about it too much. Follow the instructions as written, but come back to this video when you have 1 stitch left on the needle. So when you have 2 stitches left, I've just purled through this front stitch. I'm going to take my tapestry needle and I'm going to slip this back stitch as I would purlwise off the needle and pull the yarn through like so. What I would normally do here is just insert the tapestry needle into the next stitch knitwise and leave it on the needle, but there is no next stitch. So I'm just gonna doesn't really matter too much. I'm just gonna take this needle and insert it somewhere where it looks secure, and I'm just gonna pull the yarn through just to kind of tighten that. And then we have this last stitch. I'm gonna insert, can get rid of that, knitwise, pull the yarn through, and that's secured the bind off pretty nicely. So now you can see like both edges are super clean and almost invisible. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.